What's going on? My name is Andy. In this episode, we are going to talk about the drug epidemic that is reaching all-time high levels. We are going to take a deeper dive into the origins of heroin, its original uses, and how it was used to shape entire countries. How heroin and other harmful poisons have been pushed onto the public in order to get people addicted, weak, and keep human beings in a state of desperation. The first couple videos I did were on NASA's lies, space bubbles, and NASA's use of green screens and CGI and harnesses. I then followed up with a NASA Mars mission video, and I took 10 minutes to show photos of animal bones that have been called rocks. But they're animal bones, clearly, and if you haven't seen those videos, check them out on my YouTube or Rumble station. In this episode, however, I wanted to expose some different lies. I wanted to explain how this all happened, why I believe it happened, and who I think is doing it. The reason for me wanting to dive into this topic is because me and my fiance are both 5 years clean. I have lost many friends due to overdoses, and I have witnessed firsthand how it affects the addict and the families and loved ones. I have lived it, I have seen it, and now I am going to expose it. So stay with me.
My name is Andy John, the creator, and you are watching Heroin, the world's greatest weapon. Heroin, also known as diacetylmorphine and diamorphine, among other names, is a morphin opioid substance synthesized from the dried latex of the Papaver somniferum plant and is mainly used as a recreational drug for its euphoric effects. Now, I'm sorry I mangled the names of that, but I want to point out here how Wikipedia makes it seem like heroin is amazing and fun and great, so euphoric and so recreational. And let me tell you from firsthand experience, it is not. So basically, in layman's terms, what I think they do is they take the seeds off of certain poppy seeds and they basically scrape off the residue that's on the seeds. And with some mixtures and some calibrations, boom, you have heroin. Now, if you look up the history of heroin, what you will get is that it was first synthesized from morphine by a British chemist in 1874 and was introduced as a commercial product by the Bayer Company of Germany in 1898. Now, Bayer had started the production of heroin in 1898 on a commercial scale. The first clinical results were so promising that heroin was considered a wonder drug. Indeed, heroin was more effective than codeine in respiratory diseases. What they did not realize was that by repeatedly administering the drug over and over again, the patients would then grow a tolerance and they would just need more and more. Eventually, patients and drug users realized they could inject the drug for a stronger euphoric effect. And by 1910, users were injecting heroin, and heroin addiction began to spread quickly. We are told that governments around the world came together to make strict regulations on heroin, and by 1931, heroin seemed to be slowing down, and addiction seemed to be more scarce. But we all know what happens when you make something illegal or difficult to get, right? If you don't, I'll tell you. You get many people that see an opportunity to make money, and before you knew it, heroin became a popular drug for illicit production and trafficking.
Now, I find it fascinating that despite the fact that heroin grows out of the ground and you can take the poppy seeds and do whatever you need to do to create heroin, that it was invented in the late 1800s. I just find that ridiculous because how do you invent something that's been around? And it's like saying that you invented weed when it just grows out of the ground. It's sort of a ridiculous thing to say. But that is really the first known use as far as in America and turning it into a business. He made it into Bayer and into aspirin and got people hooked. So that is the introduction to heroin, really through Bayer and through pharmaceutical companies. I'm not satisfied with this though, because obviously heroin has been used in the past. So let's take a deeper dive and see more of its original uses. And if you guys are enjoying this so far, don't forget to hit subscribe and like.
Now, it is believed that we have been using opium, which is heroin in its purest form, right off the poppy seed, for thousands of years. The reason why we know this, or why we believe this, is because during the discovery of the Sumerian tablets, which are believed to be 6,000 years old, they learnt it had an ideograph for the poppy that translated into joy plus plant, which indicates that they have been using this plant to get high and party for a long, long time. These cultures were thought to then pass this tradition on to the cultures that would follow, including the Assyrians, the Babylonians, and Egyptians. When regarding ancient Egypt, we learn that they used opium and included it on a list of commonly used medications. From there, opium, aka heroin, spread all over the world. Now that we learned where opium most likely originated from, I want to take a look into when it first became evident that opium was harmful. It seemed like for years, opium was being used by cultures for recreational, ceremonial, and medical use. Although it seemed to have many wonderful uses, it was also very powerful. And when addiction and the desire for more kicks in, what was once a fun recreational drug is now a demon that controls your life and will never let you go. Now, opium seems to be popping up in our history, almost no matter how far you look back. But when it starts to really take an effect on people and take an effect on a country isn't until around the 1600s in China. In the 1600s, the British East India Company, which is an English and later British joint stock company, was founded. This company was formed to trade goods in the Indian Ocean region and started trading in the East Indies and later East Asia. The company ended up seizing large parts of the Indian subcontinent and began colonizing parts of Southeast Asia and Hong Kong. At one point in time, this company was the largest company in the world and used force to gain control and get things done. It is said that at this company's peak, they controlled an army of approximately 260,000 soldiers, which was 2 times the size of the British Army. Yes, you heard me correctly. A company that would travel around the world using an army to seize land, wreak havoc on whoever, wherever, and whenever. So what happened in the 1600s was China was very self-sufficient. They produced and manufactured tons of goods that the British people had grown quite accustomed to liking. Not only were the Chinese selling their goods and making money hand over fist, the emperor also laid down the law and didn't allow any outside merchant inland. He also only allowed trade out of one small port. This port was called Canton. Now, it's known as Guangzhou. Now, they say what happened was, even though the Chinese emperor was strict, and he only allowed them to sell things in one small port way outskirts, they said it didn't matter. Even though they were buying all of the Chinese products and not making any money because really they had nothing to sell China. They didn't make anything that China wanted. The British now know how they are going to get back at the emperor. They are done with spending all their money and buying all their products. They are done doing all that traveling just to be disrespected and have to park miles away in a crappy port while the emperor sits on his throne and makes money. Started growing tons of poppy in India because, again, they couldn't do it back at home. It was illegal. Ah, shucks. Guess they had to do it over there. They turned the poppy into opium, heroin, and sent ships with armies back over, delivering them opium. The funny thing is, the mainstream narrative is that they struggled selling opium to the Chinese, but I don't think that's the truth at all. From my own personal experience, I guarantee the British knew just what they were doing, those crooked teeth sneaky bastards. They went over there with a bunch of free dope, gave it to them, got them all hooked, and the Chinese were probably begging for it by the time they came back with their next shipment.
Well, that went on for quite a while. Selling of poppy, right? The selling of opium. And the emperor eventually grew really pissed off, and there was a war called the Opium War. And that's a whole nother story, all right? A whole nother story for a whole nother day. But it's interesting because that's not where the Opium War really ended, is it? Now, I've been sober almost 5 years, and most of my friends are gone. So this thing has been used for centuries now to control people, kill people, and wreak havoc on people's lives. It's crazy when you look into it because it's been used as a weapon for a long time. I just wanted to give you guys a deeper dive, and me as well, because I had to do the research for that, and that was awesome to learn all that shit. So I hope somebody learned something, and that is a history of heroin, where it came from, what it was used as, way, way back in the day, and then what it turned into, when greedy scumbags get their hands on things. But that's life, isn't it? Well, my name's Andy John. This is my channel. Hit me up on Rumble. Check out my channels. If you DM me on Instagram, I talk to people on my channel, man. I'm trying to build a community of truth, right? So follow me, and I really appreciate everything. Hit follow, hit like. Thank you all so much.